After making Dodgebolt, I received a couple of different comments mentioning that I could use Calibrated Sculk Sensors to help with keeping track of the arrows, because they can detect when a player takes damage. Now, I don't think that fully solves the Dodgebolt issues, but it's a very cool sounding mechanic that I think I can use for something else. You see, my favourite way of designing minigames is to start with an interesting mechanic and then figure out how I can turn that mechanic into a fun game. So the way that Calibrated Sculk Sensors work is that they only listen out for certain types of sounds based on the redstone signal that they receive. So this Sculk sensor here is receiving a signal of 7, which means it will only hear mobs and players getting damaged. So if I place some blocks here, you see it's not hearing this, it's not giving off a signal. But if I go up here and change to survival mode, you see that signal lit up and the lamp was powered. So instead of it being like in Dodgebolt, where once you get hit, you're out, I want it to be a game where once you get hit, your opponent gets a point. And that's where the Sculk sensors come in. So I want an array of these Sculk sensors underneath each team's side, and that way when that team gets hit, the other team will score a point. So apparently these Sculk sensors can hear up to 16 blocks away, I believe in a sphere. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So technically if I take damage here, that Sculk sensor should still go off. No, let's try it here. That seemed to... The lamp didn't go on, but that seemed to hear it. Let's try that again. Okay, we'll try it at 14. It made a sound, but again, does it make a stronger sound depending on how close you are? Am I learning new things here? Okay, so that definitely lit up the lamp. We'll go back a bit further. That definitely lit up the lamp. We'll go back a little bit further. And that didn't light up the lamp, but it did make a sound. So if we put the lamp here and we go further back... Okay, that is interesting. Which is fine because we can just put a repeater at the start. Okay. And then we'll go back to here and try this one. And that worked, and then we'll try the 16th one. Okay, so this is the distance. Again, I believe it's in a sphere. But that's quite good. I think we won't need many of these under each side. And the way that I think I'm going to do the redstone is something like this. So we'll take a signal and then we'll come across like this, and then we'll come in again, and then obviously we will have a Sculk sensor on this side doing the same thing over here, and then this repeater will power a dropper or something like that that has some items in, and the item will be what we use for the score. Now there is the problem that when this gets powered, if another one is powered at the same time or within a second, that's not going to count. You see how that lights up for a second? Now I don't really mind that. Now I could technically take a shorter pulse from the back of here, but this is still going to stay powered for that second. And I don't think I'm going to need many of these underneath the game. So I may just have it that there is that 1 second buffer, you know, invincibility frames, as they call it in some games, where if one player on your team has been hit, you've got a brief period where if you get hit again, then a point isn't scored. As far as the game is concerned, I think it's going to be a fairly small game. Bigger than Dodgebolt, but not too big. because I'm conscious I want to build this on a server where I believe the player render distance is 48 blocks. So if you imagine a 48 block diagonal, I think it works out at about 33 blocks lengthways. So we're looking at probably a 33 or 32 block square for the game. I think I'll want the game to be 5 minutes long, as that's the easiest timer to do, and it's also a good pacing for a game like this. So all we'll do to start the game is we'll have one player shoot a target block, which will then dispense an item onto a pressure plate, and that will power the game. I think all it will need to power is some kind of noise to start the game, and I believe I will also hook it up to something where the score is a dropper here, like I mentioned before. But we'll have a piston here connecting that up. So if you look here, the game is running, which means this is connected up, which means that when players are shot, the dropper will fire an item out, and then once the game is over, this item despawns, this retracts, and no more score can be counted. So if anyone is shot after the time is up, it doesn't count. So even if someone doesn't hear the final mechanism, or someone shoots a little bit too late or something like that, it's going to be fair. The game will cut out, and then the players can calculate the scores. I don't think there's any more mechanisms that I need to test here. I think the logic is simple. We will have a few of those under the game. I just need to make sure that the 16 blocks of the Sculk sensor doesn't reach the opponent's side of the board. So I might need a few of these along so that it's more like a large kind of rectangle rather than big circles, if that makes sense. But other than that, I think it's actually time to design the arena. And now a day has passed and I've finished the game. So let me walk you through the redstone first of all. So this here is the 5-minute timer. There's a pressure plate in there that an item drops down on. And this redstone signal goes two ways. The first thing it does is it powers a piston which unlocks a beacon. Because I thought I don't really want people to have to eat throughout the game, at least not often. So that beacon has resistance and healing, regeneration. That should hopefully make the game play a little bit better. We've got bells here that make a noise when the game starts, as well as when the game turns off. And this redstone here unpowers these pistons which connect these lines. So I mentioned this earlier that we would have a way to cut off the game when the game finishes. These lines here are what come from the calibrated sculk sensors. So when someone is shot, this calibrated sculk sensor sends a signal here, which comes through here, and if the game is on, this will continue coming through here, and it will go up there, and it will activate a dropper, putting an item into a shulker box. And that is basically it for the redstone. It turned out to be quite a simple game to build. And now if we come out here, this is the arena. So I built two sides. I tried to make it quite confusing and a little bit disorienting with all these kind of sculk parts and ice parts. Bear in mind the players will be wearing diamond armor, so maybe they'll blend in with the ice a little bit. And then over here we have the shulker box. So this is where the score is. Every time this team shoots someone on that team, the signal comes across here and puts an item into that shulker. And then once the game is over, the items are taken out of here and put into the barrel, and they will slowly trickle down into a hopper. The only other thing to note is that's where the target block is. So once the teams are ready on their sides, one player just needs to shoot that target block and the game begins. And I think I'll show you some footage of that now. thanks for watching. If you have any ideas, feel free to let me know. I'm probably most interested in other ways that we could use calibrated sculk sensors for minigames, because I feel like I've barely scratched the surface here with what they can do. So I'm excited to look into that in the future. Again, thanks for watching. Take care.